Hey, welcome back. This is Richard Sachs. I'm your host from Lost Arts Radio, and this is the Saturday show, the Church of the Essene Teacher call-in show that we have once a week here. We're down to the second to the last show of the year, and actually it's the second to the last show in this particular format. Some major changes are going to happen that I wanted to tell you about. And boy, I have so much to share with you tonight, and most of it, I have no idea how I'm going to fit it into words at all. It seems like it's not possible, but I'll just go ahead as if we can do it anyway and see what happens. But as far as the change of the show format, that really is going to happen after next week's show. And I've been kind of hinting and promising you that would happen. The way some people put it is we're going to go underground with the Saturday show, and not really underground because everybody knows where we're going. It's just it's going to be a private subscription club-based format for a couple of reasons. You'll need to give your name. It'll be members only. You need to give your name, email address, and recurring donation that's going to keep us from going off the air. And also, because I haven't done anything else for money at all. I won't hype products or anything that could have the slightest tinge of hypocrisy or dishonesty. And I wanted to have some way where we could keep this project going and expand, because we have ambitious ideas for some very large projects we intend to do, and we're supposed to do them, and they're supposed to start right away. And I successfully figured out, any way to do them without any money. So, we can eat very little and survive and things like that, but these projects are going to require some money. So the idea is that if the Sunday show will stay free, of course, and the educational guests will be on every week. We've got a great one coming on tomorrow that you might want to know about, and I'll tell you about that too. But the Saturday show is for people that want to do the work. And the things that we talk about, the reason I'm inviting that is because my ulterior motive for being here, because it wasn't my idea to do this at all. I really didn't have the plans to do a radio show. I'm sure, Doug had no idea what was going to happen until it was actually happening. And he graciously agreed to make it all possible with the engineering and infrastructure work and the technical underpinnings of the whole thing. Without Doug Diamond, it would not be happening. And if you want to know more about what he does, go to Doug Diamond, or diamonddiscaudio.com, and find out what his main business is. It's pretty interesting. Perfect person to make this show possible. But my motive, once I realized I had to do it, against my own desire to be anonymous and invisible for the rest of this lifetime and do my own work, and I like nature and seclusion and things like that. My ulterior motive is two things. More than 50 years in the background while I was doing other things, in deep study and investigation of how to get back and maintain and fix your health and the consciousness things that go with that, and investigating, wait a minute, there's a lot more going on to this whole scene that we call our life than what's apparent on the surface. And why is everybody, all excited in the beginning, and then they start all these things that they do, and they get really great for a while, and then they crash in various ways, or they go well, but then at the end of their life, most people find that their bodies are disintegrating, and we're told that this is normal. Old age, genetics, bad luck of running into the wrong germs when your immunity is down, and all this kind of thing. And something didn't feel right to me about that. And I actually started with serious health problems early when I was in high school. That was a long time ago. And, I was falling apart before most people and in pretty bad shape. And I was going to the cutting edge medical system and best doctors, and really well-intentioned, but they were trained in drug medicine and surgery and stuff that the body doesn't appreciate too much. Medicine, translated into real terms, is toxic chemicals that you're supposed to eat to get healthy, right? That makes a lot of sense. And then surgery, which is sometimes necessary and can save your life in an accident. But if you're trying to use it to get healthy, unless there's no other, option at the last second of your situation, in most cases, the body really responds to it just like some kind of a knife attack in a dark alley, it's no different to the body. And the body's conscious, as we've been talking about, and some of you already know, so that's not good. There are better options, and I wanted to find out what they were. So I spent lots of time digging into that based on very old things that were taught since before recorded history, really, by the teachers who knew about them. They did not require high-tech or any kind of drug medicine or radical invasive procedures or anything like that. It was all based on laws of nature that these teachers were sharing with people. And so I just got really into that, and then ran into a document we've talked about called the Essene Gospel of Peace, Volume 1 in particular, and I remembered being there on some quite unusual stuff. And I spent a lot of time over the next 40 or 45 years adapting that to use in modern conditions where things are a lot more toxic and difficult than they were thousands of years ago. They were difficult then too, of course, but now is unique. Unique in a lot of ways that are coming out. And the power structure that's running most of the world right now is involved in trying to destroy the whole thing with amazingly advanced technology, most of which they haven't shown us yet. So my motive in saying, okay, I'll do the radio show, is share whatever I've learned that might be useful for you in health and upgrading your energy levels and not needing external crutches to feel good, and especially not things that just wear off and leave you feeling worse than you felt before. And we're going to get into that a little bit tonight too. And then I figured if anybody's interested, and motivated to actually do the work that feeling great requires on a sustainable basis, not once in a while and then crashing, all the time. If they're willing to do the work, then that does something else really interesting. And it makes the person who does the work inside themselves, gets their health back, gets away from drugs, and figures out how to not destroy themselves with the wrong food and that sort of thing. They become, they get into a position where they can use what they learned to start doing the real work on the inside, the consciousness level work. And that's powerful. I'm not talking about a belief system, a philosophy or religion that I want to get you to convert to, or it's nothing like that. It's real. The words aren't really adequate to what I'm trying to convey. I'll try to do it during the course of the show and over time, but your real state, your normal state, I just want to remind you of that. And I have to do the work at the same time because, one of the reasons I didn't want to do this is I realized I'm like a preschool level beginner in this stuff. There should be some master of it teaching you guys all this, but I don't personally know anybody like that wanted to come and do the show instead of me. So as long as I'm the one here, I have to really do my homework every week and share the best level of usable, actionable information that I possibly can share with you. And I have to always add the disclaimer, especially on the public format that we're in for 2 more weeks here, that this is not medical advice. If you want medical advice, diagnoses of your condition, or treatment options, or any of that stuff, please go to your medical doctor immediately, and I'm sure they'll give you all the drugs that you need and cut out the organs that should be cut out and give you the radiation that you want and all that stuff, psychiatric drugs and diagnoses. I don't do any of that stuff. I'm not a medical doctor. This is different. This is sharing information that's been around for a long, long time, the whole time, really, that humanity has been on this planet. And we have some records of it, but most have been lost, at least in visible form. So we're going to go into the other format. People that are really interested and realize it's not entertainment. This is real stuff, you guys. And it requires work, serious work, not stressful work. The weird thing about it is that it's a kind of work that requires total relaxation, which is not as easy as it sounds. It is and it isn't, but It requires learning a really deep level of relaxation, level after level after level after level. Like the old cartoons, where you count back when you're being hypnotized, except the difference is you're not going to be hypnotized with this. You get more and more and more clear and awake. So it's the opposite of the hypnotic thing. It's to break hypnotic spells, which we're under now. And if we do it privately in a club basis where you've got to sign up and you have to decide whether it's even worth it or you're just here to kind of listen to something and then forget it and then go on to your usual stuff. If you're serious, that you're really interested and you sign up, then I have a little bit more leeway to get into this stuff with you. And of course, you can still call in and share your own experiences and questions and comments and whatever you want. So it's supposed to be an interactive show like this one. And tonight and next week, we'll still do the thing where if you'd like to call in and talk about something that's meaningful to you, your own experience or questions or things like that, you can do that after I finish talking. Usually I'll talk for the first hour and maybe a little bit into the second one, depending on how much I've got that I want to let you know about. And then if you want to get on the phone queue so that you'll have a chance to get in, because we'll take a few calls after I finish, that number is 657-383-1002, 657-383-1002. And I'd be really glad to have you be part of the show. So the other thing is that, if we're going to keep going, we got to have a way to raise money. And I can't do it by anything that's at all dishonest. So I figured it's got to also be something that can't stress anybody financially. And if they really want, to be part of this with us, $10 a month is the minimum. If you've got a bunch of money and you want to help more, make it $100 or $1,000 a month, whatever you can, and we'll do our projects faster. $10 a month minimum, and that means we're not going to go off the air, at least not for lack of money, and that we'll be able to keep going into this a lot more deeply than otherwise, and we can start, hopefully, if we get lots and lots of people signing up, we can start our projects not just for the school, but in organic farming, environmental restoration things, advanced energy generation technologies, mainly changing the planetary atmospheric energy, which we're going to get into more. So we're going to call the new club format Planetary Healing Club. And I'm hoping that if it's something that interests you, that you'll take part in it. And it's not like me telling you guys stuff, just one-sided. It's sharing experience, and then you become the ones that are doing the healing. Not just me. We all do it together. And you find out that you've got so much amazing healing power, positive energy inside yourself that has been unconscious, if you're like most people, for most of your life. You bring that out, and your world and your life are not the same. It starts with you. You can't just stay where you are in your consciousness level inside yourself with almost complete unconsciousness of who you really are and go out there and do some kind of activity to save the world. What that usually results in is a bunch of people fighting about who's right. Really opposite than real healing. So what I'm interested in is, if you do want to work in an outer issue-based cause, like trying to stop GMOs or geoengineering or nuclear power or chemical farming or whatever, if you want to really be effective, what almost everybody in these movements misses is that your effectiveness is not just proportional to how many people you can fight with. That's not what it's about. That doesn't get the result that we want. It stays in the same paradigm of conflict and fighting. And I'm not suggesting a path for somebody who's afraid of fighting. This takes even more facing yourself. Even if you can't imagine it right now, it takes a lot more courage than facing outside opponents. But it's where the real power is. And if you do it, then everything changes. And you start with simple things like health, but it all goes together. So if we have this new private format, which starts in 2 weeks, then we can talk more freely, both of us, me and you also, and details about fixing up things inside yourself and how you become an extremely powerful force in healing life on this planet. And it struck me too, it's kind of funny that most of the groups that go underground do it because they're doing something so bad that they have to hide. It's just the opposite of what I'm talking about. We're becoming more private because we're talking about things that are so good, that are right now forbidden because of the type of individual that's ruling the planet. Real information on health, real information on energy, real information on environmental cleanup and things like that. I don't know if you noticed, but those are forbidden. You're not supposed to run into any of that real information. And the fake educational systems are busy teaching nonsense about all that stuff, and the real stuff, even the teachers generally don't know. So the ones that want to hide usually and go underground, they're the ones that want to do a lot of damage, and the various racist groups that want to kill everybody but their own race or their own religion, or the communists and fascists and violent aspects of BLM and Antifa and all these crazy groups where they think that hurting somebody, if you make sure you're hurting the bad guys, is really going to be great and it's going to have a good result. That's not true, because there are laws of nature in operation, and one of them is if you hurt someone else, it hurts you, and there's no way to get away from it. And it's not that there's some really stern God who's ready to punish you for all the mistakes you make. It's your own consciousness. That's why you can't get away from it. You can't hide. And it will always make sure it eventually takes you through an experience that lets you learn why that was a mistake. And those experiences are not very much fun. So the people that think that they can get ahead or get to their goals by damaging other people, destroying property, and doing all this stuff, they're very misguided, and they will find out that that's not correct, what they're believing that will happen. And if you're in one of those groups, I can tell you, it's going to ruin what's left of your own life and get even more messed up, and you're not going to get the things that you desire to get from that. It's not cool to be in a group that wears masks on the street and wants to beat everybody up. That's not intelligent. And you can tell that, but most of those people can only scream. And I think they're being highly influenced by electromagnetic radiation now being sent out from regular towers, maybe from NextRad facilities, and certainly from the covert microwave transmitter facilities and millimeter wave facilities that people like the whistleblower from Seattle were talking about. So the same thing applies to the global rulers that are at the top level and are all proud of themselves for being able to destroy everything so well. It's totally satanic at that level. And if you're involved in that and you think you're in the elite, and that you're going to have a wonderful experience that's going to become permanent by merging with the dark power that you're serving, that's not how consciousness works. So it's a really bad shock of what actually happens when you do that. You can't betray who you really are indefinitely with no results to that. There are laws of nature that always work. Eventually, your own consciousness drags you back through whatever experience you need, probably not pleasant, and you won't like it. So instead, my suggestion is, since we're being listened to by all kinds of monitors, and we probably still will be when we're private, it's just one level more of confidentiality that we'll have. But I'm suggesting that instead, if you're in that so-called elite group that isn't intent on destroying all the rest of us and themselves, why not, in the other direction, start investigating who you actually are and avoid a lot of pain that really is not necessary. So the reason our Saturday show is going to disappear from the public airways in 2 weeks, and we hope you'll come with us if you want to, is because darkness is running the system for now. And we're planning to not only discuss light, the opposite, but give you actionable information that's going to make new things possible, first of all in your own life, but after that to be able to share on the outside. I don't know any way to adequately explain this, so I hope you'll give me a lot of latitude and try to see what I'm attempting to get through to you. It's not a belief. It's not any kind of cult or, group that I'm trying to get you to join or anything. It's practical self and world healing work. And you are designed to be able to do that. Who you are is the most amazing, brilliant, incredible being beyond what our imagination generally reaches to. So this is forbidden information, and it's going to get really heavy duty, especially after we make this change. And it becomes especially forbidden by the power structure when it's practical. If you just talk about philosophies and say, oh yeah, the New Age is coming and all this kind of stuff, and just stop your mind, rise above it, all this stuff that's not practical, and people sit in meditation trying to do that for lifetimes and it doesn't happen, then it's not so forbidden. But what we're talking about is not like that. It actually will do something. It radically changes your personal existence in a good way. So if you're interested in learning more about that, there's a little bit written about it at a site called lostartsradio.com/club, CLUB, which you're invited to. If you're listening to this, you have a personal invitation to join us on that if you want to. But it's not entertainment. And I have to warn you that it's not without effort that you to put into practice what we're going to be sharing. But if you're motivated and brave enough to work on yourself, then you're invited. And the question is, where does that motivation that you need come from? And you get right back to the basic question of purpose, which drives everything that we do. And a lot of the problem right now, the reason that people are so attracted to drugs or anything that'll give them a temporary good feeling, is that purpose has kind of been lost for a lot of what we do. It degenerates after a while. It gets lost, and you get excited about some things, and then they fall apart, and it degenerates into just getting through another day, which is not too exciting. And you can't just do that indefinitely. It gets really depressing. So if you make it as simple as you possibly can and say, what was the original purpose of everyone here on the earth, I think, that's ever been here, to feel as good as they can. That's it. But that's not as superficial as it sounds. There are levels and levels and levels of how you can feel and what you can experience. And there's counterfeit feelings that are manufactured by every kind of drug and in all forms. And then there's the real ones that are designed right into you, that don't wear off and don't go away. And they open up your perception instead of making you more hypnotized. But even the violent, really bad people that think that they're going to get energized by hurting and destroying other people, they're doing it because it means they're dominant, they're in control, they think that it's going to make them feel really great. They're there trying to feel good too. So no one on earth, as far as I can see, or anywhere else, is selfless in any way. Absolutely everybody, even the great spiritual teachers, they're doing exactly what they want to do. It's just that when you get more perceptive and you start being in touch with more of where you came from, what you want changes. And you just want well-being and happiness and great joy for every other life form in existence. That's what you personally want. So you're still doing exactly what you want. And the ones who really get connected there, they stay in a very high state by staying merged into, regardless of what you call it, spirit or this life current that we've tried to talk about on recent shows. And it reminds me, when I was in the university, a student in the 1960s, all the anti-war stuff was going on, and it was really kind of good. It wasn't like what's going on in the universities now with the complete craziness. We had professors sitting out late at night with us talking under the stars in beautiful environment about what could be done to help the world. And there was a lot of interest in drugs at that time, LSD and marijuana and anything to make people feel better, but they were not doing it just to be out of it for a while. They were really reaching to see what's possible. How can you feel if you get back to yourself? And they talked about, they just want to get high, and it was reflected in the music of the time, much of which was really good music. And they were sincerely looking for something. And I'm kind of talking about the same thing, because they weren't wrong. That search to try to get high, that's legitimate. It's just they made a mistake and tried to do it with drugs and didn't realize that high state, beyond what they could imagine, was normal to them. So we're trying to get back to something we barely remember, but it's real. Some super happy, high energy state that is not temporary. But we've lost touch with it, so we try to do it by some kind of achievement in the world through a job or projects or family or social issues or relationships, and all kinds of drugs, medical drugs, over-the-counter drugs, alcohol, tobacco, marijuana is a major one too. Even though it's a normal, natural herb, that high feeling helps you not care about what you really do need to care about. And it's mistaken for being really good state of being, but it dulls consciousness. And power trips over other people are another way people try to do it. Anything about ego building, feeling like you're better than other people, or somebody else who did something bad to you is the bad person and you're really good, and so it makes you feel superior. And all of these things eventually crash, and what they leave is deep depression. And that's not fun at all. That's not the highest state that we're after. So they don't work, because all along we ourselves were the source of that high energy that we've been looking for. And when you try to do it in outside things, even in relationships to other people, which can be great, but if you're relying on that to do the work that you're supposed to do yourself, it ends up not working. Even if it's a great relationship, eventually, you deal with old age and disease and death and misfortunes of various kinds that you don't expect. You can get through those without feeling bad if you find it now in yourself and get back to realizing that we're unlimited beings of consciousness or spirit or light, made out of consciousness and capable of absolutely everything, anything that we can imagine and much more. And it's not a belief, again. It's real. This is something that you can go out and do and experience, but you've got to do the work. So how do we get into this mess? And this is all leading to something, a reason that I want to bring this up. But I'm going through these things because of a few people that I talked to during the week and wanted to know how these things fit together. So I'm just offering you some ideas to think about. You don't have to agree with me, but consider it, because this has come out of quite a few decades of really deep investigation of these things. And what it looks like to me is that we came here to experience this so-called three-dimensional existence, and we had no body, and at one level we didn't even need mind. All the way down here to this relatively low frequency of existence, we needed body and we needed mind to experience this level, and body we needed to sense and move around in this reality. So it was we who created it when it was being formed inside our mother. It wasn't just a thing. It wasn't a piece of the mother's body. It would never have started. It wasn't just because of genetics. We caused the genetics. They mirror consciousness. And so we built that incredible body out of consciousness, stepping it down onto the level of frequency that looks like a physical being. But it's actually, if you look at the atomic structure of the body, it's almost entirely empty space, vibrating and spinning at a certain frequency so it looks and feels solid. but it's a conscious entity, and we created it out of our own initial consciousness. So it's been trying to communicate with us since before we were born, and we've been oblivious to it, just looking on the outside. That needs to be fixed if you want to get anywhere for real. Mind also had to be created as an interface between us, pure consciousness, and the level of existence in the physical reality. And mind is an incredible interface. It has access to all of the information about everything, all life forms in the world, everything going on here. What we call subconscious and unconscious, that psychologists and psychiatrists talk about as being vast, and we have less than 1% of it in our awareness. All of it's conscious to mind. Mind's made out of consciousness. It's got all that information at its fingertips, so to speak. And it's a conscious being itself. And it also has been trying to get our attention since before we were born, and we've been ignoring it too. So we got these two kids, both of which we abandoned before birth, mind and body, and they're alive and they're conscious. And as long as we don't realize that, we can't become aware of what we could really do. Both of those kids that you have are miraculous. They're both conscious and wide awake. They're both trying to get your attention. They're both trying to communicate with you. And I know a lot of people are going to think this is just completely crazy and just write it off. That's okay. This show is for the people that have had enough experience in life that they have some kind of a feeling that these things are possibly real. Not only they're possibly real, they could possibly be useful, which is the only reason to go through it. It's not just for a bunch of information. If that's as far as it goes, that's a waste of time. I'm not even interested. The reason is that it's usable. Everything here is made out of consciousness, and that's a bunch of words until you start to grasp it. When you do, it changes everything about how you're living. So we got them ready, body and mind, as great vehicles for experience here, brought the blueprints and the plans of what we're going to do in this lifetime, and then we forgot everything. And we started identifying ourselves with the body and with the programs in the mind, and thought that that's us, and that's the origin of all the misery and confusion and everything that most of us run into trying to get through this lifetime. It's all curable. It's also the origin of what they call karma, or action-reaction, reaping what you sow, an endless cycle that just goes on and on and on, never finding the goal, rising, falling, and falling apart, until we start to remember who we are. And at that point, we know, wait a minute, those programs that your mind is playing, like right now, and your mind may be resisting all of these ideas because it has gotten into a situation where it thinks it can only get our attention by dominating everything that we believe, think, and do. And it's playing these programs. So if you want to be aware of that, which you can do starting immediately, you just stop, get very still, and watch the thoughts that are going through your mind, feeling that each one has, and become aware of them. Now, you have to really do this. It's not just something to listen to. Those thoughts are streaming through like a ticker tape that never stops on the stock market, saying how the stock prices rise and fall. This is going on constantly in your mind. And up to now, we've been falling for it and thinking that's us. These are my thoughts, my feelings, my identity. Wrong. Those are programs being played by your mind. Once you grasp that point where you're ready to even consider it, that leaves a vacuum of who you are, and that starts being filled by something more real. So if you start watching that, then you can get gradually, step by step, back to your natural state, which is beyond any drug high you can imagine. Not dependent on anything on the outside, and it never crashes. And we can heal ourselves physically, our body, our mind, our emotions, we can be okay again, in spite of what's going on in the world, or with some bad relationships, or people around you who are making a problem, or circumstances that you're in. You don't have to stay around people that are giving you a hard time. But even if you are, once you change your source well-being and your energy and your healing to internal, nobody can take it away. You start becoming empowered right away. And what I'm saying is, for those who do that, even if there are only a few who have any interest, they get a gift in response, and they get the ability to help heal life on this planet. That's really what I'm after. Because I spent, I guess, about 20 years in the last 5 decades or so of researching health and consciousness. And that 20 years, I was also looking at the economic and political power structure that's running this planet. America and most of the world has been controlled by it for a long time. And as a result of that, I've got a pretty good idea of how all these different attacks against humanity tie together, and where they're going, what they're doing to us now, every day, which is not friendly, and what they plan for us in the years immediately ahead. And I don't want to see it happen. They're in the middle. We can talk about this more if you want, but they're in the midst of a ceremonial sacrifice of all life on the planet. It's not just population reduction, which is bad enough, like what they talk about on the Georgia Guidestones and in various documents that most people haven't read. It's not just population reduction, it's extermination of the whole place. And you can tell that logically, because if it were just population reduction, they wouldn't be just full-on destroying the life support systems of the planet with irrevocable damage, which is what they're doing. So all those things contribute to the understanding of why we need to go private. And if you want to be a part of it, we have work to do. You can't fix the outside world without fixing your own life and yourself. So what's your purpose for being here? Is it just to go through and spend time and have a good time and try to ignore deeper things that are going on that you know are there, and just try to feel good as things start to fall apart, and then your body gets in worse and worse shape over time, and the doctor will say, oh yeah, you have this disease, or it's because you're old, or it's because of your genetics, or it's because of a germ. And more and more of your life starts being taken up by sickness and allergies and degeneration and diseases, and your mind starts getting foggy and you start having more fear in the background. That's no fun. And it also accomplishes nothing on the outside. Whereas you have so much power, and you're such an incredible, indescribable being, that if you'll do the work to bring your own life into line, then you've got the power that people can't even imagine to help harmonize what's going on in the world. You don't need any technology. You don't need any outside discoveries to turn the world around from its downward cycle into something better. You have the whole package in your consciousness. It's connected to your body and mind now, but it's not from them. It's from you. So the only way to really turn around all the horrible stuff that's going on in the world, and it's worse than what you know about, most likely, by a lot, but some power is needed that's greater than the one engineering the destruction. And there's only one power like that, and fortunately, that's what created you. You're not a piece of matter or meat or just a body. You're incredible. Your consciousness, you're unlimited. So if you just pray to a higher power to save you, I mean, that's not bad. That might be a good start. But then you actually have to do your part. You have to access the natural potential that you've got, that you've been carrying around your entire life, to be beyond the most heroic personality, archetypal personality that you can imagine. You're beyond that. So this show, the attempt of this show, and I'm not probably not explaining it very well at all. I'm just really trying to get something through to you that it's not about me at all. I'm not even relevant in this thing. It's about you. Personally, not everybody else who's listening, you. And you have a choice. And the reason that you're here and listening, hopefully paying attention, is that every minute is like a crossroads. And you're choosing what to do. If you make the choice to become conscious, everything else follows. Because what that innocuous sounding word means is very deep. But to stay with it and not just a momentary saying that you're going to do something, that takes bravery and focused intent and perseverance. So, you know, in the fairy tales, every time they talk about a pile of gold that the character's trying to get to, whatever it symbolizes, every single one of them is guarded by a dragon or dragons. In real life, that's true. So the gold, which is reconnecting to who you really are, which is the most incredible being you can imagine, that's guarded by the dragon of the programs that are being projected by your mind. And that's why I suggested that you start by watching what they're doing. You know, your abandoned kid, one of your two abandoned kids' mind, has gotten in the habit of playing programs 24 hours a day nonstop and kind of laughing to itself because you believe it's you. It's never been you. You're not limited like that. And in those programs, there's all kinds of things to keep your attention off who you really are, including critiquing other people or condemning other people, condemning yourself, because we've all made horrible mistakes in life. I'm not any exception at all. But what you have to do is pull away from that and start something totally fresh. No trace of negative taste from the past. And what you've got that is available to you is unlimited. So another thing that is a dragon guarding that pile of gold is the attraction of feeling good right away through some use of drugs of some kind. And I don't mean just things that are obviously drugs. There's a lot of things that can be self-deceptively used as a drug, which means something that makes you unaware of what's bothering you so you feel better temporarily. And then when they wear off, you always feel worse. And you want them even more. And it's a cycle that destroys you. And I don't care if it's natural or unnatural drug. The point is the psychological effect. It makes you weak. It makes you dependent. It makes you unaware of your actual power, what you can do, and the incredible existence in life that you can have. But that program says, why do all this hard work and change your habits when you can feel good now with drugs? And even food can be used as a drug. If you're totally always trying to taste something even better than you tasted an hour ago or yesterday, and whether your body gets really fat or just really unhealthy, that's a drug. Because when you get aware of your body again as not you, but one of your kids that you need to make up with and heal that relationship, you're giving the body food. Your consciousness. You don't eat food. I know this sounds weird. I'm sorry. But I have to tell you the truth. You don't eat food. You eat consciousness because that's what you are. Your body eats food. So when you give food to your body, you're actually taking care of one of your kids. I keep wanting to apologize for how strange it must sound. But I got to tell you, I don't think you're going to hear this too many other places. The reality is that when you take food, you're feeding your body, which is your kid. And how much willpower does it take to give your kid only good food that's going to help it? None. So all this need of willpower and fighting yourself to not misuse food because you're so attached to it, it's because you're misidentified with who you are. You're not the body. You use it. It's like this fantastic, magical, miraculous costume. And it's wonderful, and it deserves a lot of love and support and good care, but it's not you. It can be a drug. Almost everybody is using it to some degree like that. They're just eating for the taste. That's not, it's like if you're responsible for your child and you say, well, this is really going to taste great. Of course, it's going to hurt the kid in the end, but it doesn't matter. It's really going to taste great. And we'll try to ignore the health aspect. You wouldn't do that if you're a good parent or a good babysitter or caregiver. But we do that all the time. And then we suffer the consequences. And when we start getting sick, the doctor says, oh yeah, you have this germ. They don't have a clue what the sickness is. This sickness is the body's process of trying to throw out all the accumulated garbage, mostly from the wrong stuff that we've been eating that's dead and processed. All this meat, we're not designed as carnivores or omnivores at all, for many physiological reasons and psychological. And when you have years and decades of putting the wrong fuel in the body, then it builds up toxic garbage that it has to throw out at some point. And that can be part of the process of getting sick, in quotes. It's not a germ that just was bad luck and you ran into the wrong germ and you have to kill everything to get healthy. That's really not an intelligent way to do it. And this has been taught since before we're aware of. And obviously other things that are not food, like alcohol, for example. Alcohol is just used so you can become unconscious of what your mind is trying to tell you and what you know is true, and especially of what's bothering you. And alcohol is a brain cell killer. It's a general cell killer. It's a pretty good preservative. It's really not something that can be consumed by any life form, and well, maybe some bacteria, but not mammal-level life forms or anything like that, and have anything but damage. People do that for a while because it dulls the brain, and it makes you unaware of what's bothering you, and then eventually your body pays the price, and it's really, really uncomfortable. You don't want to have liver disease, and you don't want to be in a hospital if you can possibly avoid it. Certainly not for that. And the times when you avoid it is now when you still have a choice. So the idea of becoming unconscious so that you feel better is a really mistaken idea, because that unconsciousness doesn't feel good. It's against your basic nature. So if you're doing anything to be unconscious, and people start thinking that's their definition of having fun, right? So they go out on the weekend and drink cell-killing alcohol or do other things, and they think this is really fun, and then they have no idea why they feel so terrible afterwards, and why going back to work on Monday feels even worse. Because it's a mistake. It's not a mistake to try to feel great and to get high and have all this energy and everything. That's great. But how you do it is a life and death difference. Marijuana is the same way. And yeah, if people are in a situation where they cannot do any real healing or detoxification of the body, and there's nothing they can do, then sometimes they'll use it for becoming less aware of pain because it makes you not care. I've watched it for decades, since the 60s, and that's what it's done in every single case. It can also be valuable with people that are prone to violence, because it makes them stop caring too, and they tend to stop beating other people up or doing things like that. But that's the level on which it's useful. And even then, it's really not brilliant to burn it and breathe the smoke, because your lungs are designed for fresh, clean air. They're not designed to take in particles of anything at all. Banana peels, marijuana, cigarettes, whatever, they're not designed for it, and they don't clean solid particles out very fast. They tend to turn black. You really don't want to turn your lungs black. I'm just suggesting that. It's up to you, of course. But I don't think it's a very good idea. So if you're in a situation where you got to consume marijuana because you want to dull your mind and become unconscious, which in some cases may be the only option, Eat it or juice it raw, not cooked, not burned. And I would say that that's if you have no choice and you're not willing to do the real healing work. And the real healing is detox and then change nutrition, exercise, sunlight, rest, all these things. And even a lot of terminal cancer patients have been totally cured by natural means. So I would say that's a lot better course than just dulling your mind until your body falls apart using marijuana. But again, it's your choice. Medical drugs are pretty much the same thing. Our guest that we had on, excuse me, Dr. Rima Lebo, explained that every single medical drug is what she calls an enzyme killer. The enzyme killers are really not very good for you. And these medical drugs, if you get away from the euphemism of calling them medicine, they're actually toxic chemicals, and the idea is that you're supposed to eat the toxic chemical to heal your body and feel great. This is really not brilliant, you guys. And it's not brilliant for those of you who've gone through medical school and just memorized that all this is the way to health. You know, we've gotten overly impressed with complexity, multi-syllable words that sound really impressive, especially if they're Latin and they say, oh yeah, you have this condition. And you have the right condescending attitude to tell people that that's what they have. This is not a sign of intelligence. Occasionally you have some really brilliant doctors getting through that without losing their common sense and ability to think clearly. Same thing with PhD training. But most of the people that go through it successfully succumb to the psychological programming. They get really arrogant, think that they know a whole lot, which they actually just memorized. And they can quote all kinds of impressive sources and everything. But what's obvious right in front of them, they can't see it. So I would suggest, if you're in that category, start waking yourself up. Start studying the obvious. Start questioning everything. Like the bumper stickers in the 60s that first said question authority, which is applicable in this case. And then the one right after it said question everything. And they were right. And people don't want to do that because they've memorized this whole reality structure that defines who they are, especially if you get some advanced degree and everybody really thinks that you know a lot because your first name is changed to doctor and stuff like that. But the reality is, if you don't have functioning common sense, if you're impressed with memorizing super complex information, you could be out to lunch and not know it and be just, telling yourself that you know all these things when the opposite is true. And in the case of drugs, as I said, they don't have to be obvious drugs. If you're involved in some mind-numbing activity that you consider entertainment, even if it's not just drinking yourself to death, if it's something else that's just getting you out of your normal awareness, you can use that as a drug too. And like I said, power trips over other people, identifying with incredible amounts of possessions that you've got as your identity. It's all wrapped up too in hanging around with people who are doing this stuff. And there's a principle called resonance that makes people share their frame of mind and their emotional state. And the ones that are the most strong that you're around, if you're not even stronger in yours, you take those on and you start feeling that way and you start thinking that that's you. It was never you. You're the essence of beauty and incredible being. And if you hang around and just share this practice of just wiping out your own awareness with other people who are into that, then you're going to be into it too, and you'll have the natural consequences of it. And I'm just suggesting that you remember that's not the only choice. You could start this minute or whenever you want to and get quiet in yourself. Stop running critiques of everybody else and circumstances and everything, using up your attention with that, and turn it on yourself. Because criticizing other people, blaming them for what's happening, Even if you're right that they've done bad things, it's never going to help you. You can avoid that in the future, but to really heal the damage, there's only one place you can do that, and that's internally in yourself. You've got to start by even being aware emotions that are running through you all the time. If you don't start with that step, the others do not work. So I'm suggesting you can stop throwing away your time anytime, and drugs of any of those kinds are appealing because they can make you unaware of what's bothering you, whether it's marijuana, alcohol, medical drugs, power trips over people, food addiction, stuff like that. Those are attractive because they make you unaware, so you don't have to feel consciously uncomfortable. But the discomfort is still there. Did you notice that? It's still in the background. And so pain and discomfort have value. The mind and the body are trying to communicate with you. It's not some kind of mistake of nature that you have discomfort and pain, emotional or physical. It's super valuable, because if you listen to it and you avoid the programs that make you want to not know about it, then you can fix what's causing the pain, and you can see that the pain was of incredible value. So eventually, when you make the relationships with the two kids, the mind and the body, healthy again, then you can fix your physical health. Even if you have a terminal disease, in most cases, you can turn it around with natural means. Telling you what to do, feel free to go to your doctor and get all the drugs and everything. I'm just saying that what these teachers who have been around since the beginning have pointed out is that almost all of these things are reversible, and they tell you how to use the laws of nature to do that. And it all comes down to minute details of what you do all day and all night. So we're creating our own experience, not other people, not other situations, but us, by harmonizing into things that have really no connection to us, no real connection. And we start living something that's not honest and not true to ourselves, which is the main thing we have to do. And the results we get from that are inescapable. So if results are going to come from causes, might as well make really good ones, right? That seems like it would be just kind of basic logic to me, and we miss it. I missed it for most of my life too. It's not like I'm coming from any kind of different place, but eventually you figure out that, wait a minute, I don't have to do that. I don't have to keep doing these things that aren't good for me and then suffering the results. That's really not intelligent. So how about stopping now and starting a whole new pattern based on being kind to yourself, not stoic and, punishing yourself for things. That's just really not constructive at all. I'm talking about unconditional love for yourself. Don't hold anything against yourself or anybody else. Defend yourself, prevent bad things from happening with defensive measures where you have to. Condemnation of anybody. Because if you condemn anybody else, even if it's justified, in quotes, this is a big trap. If you condemn anybody else for anything, you have to condemn yourself too. Because we've all made some kind of bad mistakes if we admit it. And if you don't give unconditional love, not even just forgiveness, I'm saying beyond forgiveness. Because with forgiveness, you're still aware that there's something you're forgiving, that the person or you did bad. Getting beyond that, you don't even look at that. You just think this is an unlimited, beautiful being that is made of pure spirit or consciousness. And it's all love. You don't have anything left to forgive. That's where you're going, if you are willing to do it. And what that does is it changes your whole feeling about yourself at the same time. It's completely amazing, and you have to really experience that. So I would say start with the basics. Watch the flow of thoughts and emotions and programs in your mind. And we can talk about that if you're having difficulty with it or interesting experiences with it or anything. But become aware of that. Start watching that all the time. Even if you're busy, even if you're talking to somebody else, even if you're digging a ditch or cleaning a bathroom or going to work or taking care of the kids, be watching that flow of thoughts in the background all the time. And then with the relationship with mind, you apology and a new direction of your relationship, because these two relationships are really important. You can't not have them. You can either make them good or bad. So you tell your mind, sorry, I ignored you all my life, even though you were my kid. I'm not going to do that anymore. And we're going to do things together now that are really good. And you'll like it. Remember, mind's like a 2-year-old kid. It's only interested in things that are fun. So you don't critique mind. You give it things to do that are fun, that you as the parent know are going to help both of you. And then start listening to all the messages from the body and appreciating them, and express apology and new directions to the body too, because it's conscious. And both of these kids are going to be so overwhelmingly appreciative that you're doing this. You won't even recognize your life after that. It's going to be a lot better. And then you start reviewing the food, drugs, and everything that you give your body, because it's not you, it's the body that you're feeding. So you take a hard look at everything. Get rid of the non-organic stuff, get rid of the processed stuff, get rid of the outright poisons like alcohol and drugs. Take care of the kid. That's a big responsibility, and if you do, you get a lot of reward for it. Get the right sleep patterns going. Get enough sleep. That has a huge effect on how you see the world. Learn about the 3 kinds of exercise that you need. Get enough sunlight every day that you possibly can. If you're in a place where you can't do sunlight and there's no way, then what I did is use vitamin D3 as a second choice backup. I can't tell you what to do. I'm not prescribing anything. I'm just mentioning that what I did is I took 10,000 units of vitamin D a day, and it really helped. But now I do it all with sunlight, and it's way better. But having the vitamin D is, as Dr. Brownstein and Dr. Group and others talk about, is way better than the usual deficiency that most people have. They're almost all deficiency in iodine too. And I found a really good form of atomic iodine on Amazon if you don't want to spend much money, because I didn't have much to spend on it. It's called Atomidine. Really good. It's super cheap. It's like $13 for 2 ounces. If you've got the money and you want a better form, probably the one called Survival Shield X2 that Alex sells on his InfoWarsStore.com site is probably better. But either one works. So you start new directions, and you take care with the sunlight and the grounding, and only feed it what's good for it and in the right amounts at the right times, and get yourself getting good sleep every night. And then keep an eye on the programs that are running. Become aware that you're either blessing or cursing people around you and the ones in your mind all the time. This is not just people who believe in voodoo and Santeria and stuff like that. Everybody is doing this. When you think kindly of someone, you're blessing them. And if you become aware that you're a transmitter of fine frequencies that are real, this is not imaginary. You're stronger than any cell tower, but only when you bring your transmitted frequency into coherence. We'll talk about that too. But because of that frequency that's going out of you, that you're receiving and transmitting all the time, what you're thinking and feeling toward other people affects them. It hurts them or helps them, even if you're just barely conscious that you're doing it. So you make that conscious, and if you want to help yourself, because remember I said we're all 100% selfish, the way to help yourself with that is to think really kind, blessing thoughts toward everybody, especially the people that are difficult in your life. You'd be amazed what that does, even for your physical body. So you start being aware of that. Start looking at what you're afraid of. Fears are part of the programs running through the mind all the time, and they're optional. There's the program says, if this is happening, or this is happening, or this might happen, then obviously I have to be afraid. That's not true, to put it mildly. So you start to detach from the program, and you talk to mind, since you're fixing that relationship, and you let it know, let's do a fun game. Instead of fear, let's start thinking of blessing everybody around us and everybody in our minds that we can think of, all of the people that are doing even bad things in the world. Let's start blessing them 24 hours a day instead of having fears. We can always do fear later if we need to, and we're never going to need to. And you start making a game out of that with mind, and it gets fun. And the new direction for mind from you, that you're the parent, you're supposed to be directing it, it changes everything, and you start becoming aware of a current that's flowing through us all the time. And that's a life force current. It doesn't matter what you call it. It's not a religion thing. And you start allowing yourself to feel that flowing through your body. It heals and harmonizes everything. That's its nature. It's keeping you alive right now, even if you don't know about it. And you start consciously letting it flow into you and out to everybody else, not by merit or what they earned or the fact that they're a great person, just because it's your nature. And you bless everybody. This is the kind of practice, along with healing your physical body, that leads up to being able to do this on a large scale. So it's okay with me. If a lot of people think this is all nonsense, that's fine. If it doesn't to you, if you're willing to play with it and change your relationship with your mind and your body for the sake of feeling really, really good all the time, more and more at least, and being able to share that energy with the rest of the world, then it's you that I'm going through this stuff for. Become aware of that current. It's got energy and it's flowing through you right now. And its characteristic is harmony. Very high energy state. It's a healing flow, and it goes to the body and the mind and then other people. And then the earth systems, everybody. It's also a new approach to every relationship in your life, because whereas we get used to this justice-based system of relationships where if somebody's nice, you're nice to them, maybe. And if they're not nice, then you're mean to them. You just dump that. It's garbage. Justice is garbage. And I know a lot of people will turn me off as soon as I say that. It's okay, because you need to understand. Justice is not where we're going. Justice is endless karmic reaction, cause and effect, that never ends. Punishment for bad things, reward for good things, arrogance and ego stuff, and all of it. Unconditional love is on a level that it's not even in the same universe. So the bottom line of all this stuff, I'm sorry to be so long about it, I'm just about done. And if you want to talk at all or contribute anything or share your experience, call in 657-383-1002. It'd be fun to hear what you think. But the bottom line of it, long ago, in the 60s, when I was in the university and everybody was on, doing drugs trying to get high, I'm saying they were right. They just did it the wrong way. So this way of getting high, if you're willing to do it, the side effects are total healing and getting into kind of an ageless state where people think it's kind of strange because you're not falling apart the way you're supposed to fall apart. And you just have to accept being seen as strange to most of the world. And the people that do this, they need to support each other because it's real. And once you get a taste for it, you never want to stop. It's more addictive in a good way than anything you're doing right now that is tearing you apart. And I'm suggesting it. It's like, exercise, be on drugs. Just make sure they're endorphins that are generated from your exercise. And all the side effects are good. And it's the same thing with this consciousness work. And whatever you're involved in, projects, working on issues like the geoengineering stuff or the GMO stuff or chemical agriculture, trying to get it changed over to organic, all these good causes. If you do this work, the degree of effectiveness that you can have is going to be completely on another level. And you're not going to be getting into this strange situation where factions within these really positive groups are busy fighting and trying to kill each other. That's a result of their state of consciousness. That even if the subject is really wonderful, the result of that consciousness and carrying it into those interactions is people just endlessly arguing, criticizing each other, feeling bad in themselves, but blaming it on everybody else. So whatever you do on the outside, if you're doing this work, it's going to have a different effect. And other people's behavior is also going to start changing in a lot of cases. And you just use it as a feedback mechanism to tell you if you're doing your work correctly, and just watch the reflections on the outside. It's a completely different way of doing everything. And if you want to feel good, if you agree with me that that's the point, which really includes everything. You want a better life for your kids, that makes you feel better, right? You want to be healthy, that makes you feel better. You want relationships that are more harmonious, that makes you feel better. Feeling better is a big deal. If you're looking at it not as momentary from these drug approaches and temporary approaches, but lasting approaches that don't wear off, they don't have, nothing that's good for you has any negative side effect at all. If something has even a slight effect that's bad, be really suspicious of it. It's probably something you should never touch. So everything changes when you start being willing to look at it like this. So the only thing else I'd say, I guess, that's pretty much all I wanted to share with you, unless there are any questions. And encourage you, if you're interested in continuing this, we're going to be on the air next week on this format, but then it's going to be into the private Planetary Healing Club at lostartsradio.com/club. If you want to help that happen, we're getting into this more expensive program, and we're not sustaining any of this with money so far. So $10 minimum or more, if you can afford it, you can commit to it on that page if you feel like it, lostartsradio.com/club. And on the regular site, just regular lostartsradio.com, which is totally free, there's all kinds of articles and videos that are educational that I try to put up new ones all the time. There's a forum that if any of this stuff interests you and you want to discuss it with other people who are interested during the week, there's a free forum that Doug put together there. There's a sign up for the newsletter that gives you information about upcoming shows, like the one tomorrow night, the guest show, and that's free too. You just put your email in there and you start getting it. And you can also email questions for the next week's show, or when it changes over to Club and you're in a part of the world. We have listeners in all parts of the world, and if you're in a place where the 6 o'clock Pacific time is not convenient for you, then you're welcome to email suggested topics of discussion or questions to me at richard@lostartsradio.com. And there's also a Facebook group that one of our listeners, Emily, put up, and I invite you to go there. It's also totally free, and you can interact with people that are willing to do some of this off the beaten path stuff. And I will, at the same time, while you're doing all that, I'll keep up the homework that I'm doing, because for me to even talk about any of this stuff, seeing as how it's real and all, that puts a huge obligation on me, because I've got the same past mistakes of everybody else, and just making a mess of things. And I'm attempting to actually do everything that I'm telling you about. I'm living this research 24 hours a day, every day now, physically and on these consciousness levels. And so I'll keep that up and do my part, so I'll be able to share it with you from a place of experience, which is where I'm talking from. And as far as tomorrow's Sunday show, just to let you know about that, there was a conference on something called bioethics, which means the ethical side of mostly medicine, but other things that are people in the healthcare system. And the last bioethics I heard about was some Australian PhD bioethicists who wrote in one of the medical journals that it's totally ethical to abort kids up to age 3 because they're not actually real people by then. Everybody knows that. So killing them is actually fine if it's inconvenient for you to keep them as your kid. These are PhDs saying this kind of stuff. So this should bring up some questions and observations to your mind when you hear this. If you're practicing being wide awake and aware, we have highly educated people who are following the direction of the power structure that's involved in this massive project to destroy the whole biosphere and you in it, and keep you demoralized and depressed and fearful and fighting with each other and thinking about how bad everybody else is, all this fake educational system that produces these super experts that can't even see what's most obvious. And I mean, they're so far gone that they think it's okay to abort your 3-year-old child and kill them. This is what the modern educational system is tending to turn out now, in addition to lower level students and some professors that are going out and rioting for peace by beating up people and swinging these locks on chains over their heads, and especially beating up women and old people for the sake of saving the earth and world peace and stopping violence, right? They do that by killing people. This is not brilliant. So there is a program that is going on. It's designed by the top rulers on the planet, people who are underneath obeying that and serving it, millions and millions of them, making all the destruction possible. They're so unconscious that they think most of them think that they're working for good and maybe working to save the earth and stop global warming and reduce population so there's not too many people and all this stuff. They don't realize who they're working for. And this is why I'm not out here supporting most of the current environmental movement, even though I've been a really fierce defender of the environment since 1967 or so. But I'm talking about on the real level. Most of the big environmental groups now are falling into the same trap of saying, give government total tyrannical power over everybody, give up all your rights, admit that you're an evil person, especially if you're certain races, and the rulers will take care of you for your own good, which is completely opposite to what they're going to do, because their intent, declared in their own writings, is to eliminate humans and the rest of the life biosphere on the planet. So the point of our homework is not just for some kind of cute, fun thing to do. It's because you personally, if you're up to it, are really needed to help turn this stuff around. And you have so much power that you're sitting there with right now. Most likely you don't even have the slightest contact with it, and you need to get that back. Because if you do, there's a lot you can do. So talking about this conference on bioethics that happened November, I think was the 18th, in Southern California, it was a different kind of bioethics that was real, and they had some very brave whistleblowers from hospitals and hospice and places like that exposed that they've changed the legal meanings of the terminology of things that you sign when you go in there. And they're literally euthanizing or killing patients in the name of taking care of them, especially at hospice, but also in hospitals. And, Rima Labo, Dr. Labo, has shared her experience with Ben actually being killed in a hospital in New Jersey against all of her efforts to keep him alive. But turns out that that's not unusual. And there was this incredible conference of whistleblowers happening there, and only about 100 people got to hear it. So one of our listeners was there and sent me an information packet explaining all the speakers and the ones that didn't get to speak who were there, who were also great. And she said, you really should have some of these people on your show, And I thought, I completely agree. That's right. So for tomorrow night's show, we have a guest named Ron Panzer, who's a high-level nurse and a whistleblower who's worked in hospice and hospitals and has been incredibly courageous and exposed what he was firsthand seeing and having to participate in until he quit and got kicked out of several positions that he was in because he was exposing what was really going on. So you guys need to know about this, because even if you're not going to be in these situations, you may have older relatives or people that you become responsible for. And you need to learn what the real options are, what it means when you sign certain things like do not resuscitate orders and things like that. And also for young people who are deciding whether to write organ donor on their driver's license. We'll get into that with some future guests who specialize in organ donation, brain death, and stuff like that. But tomorrow's show, it's not to get upset. It's not to make you feel really terrible. I really want to emphasize that, because we're going to be covering some really heavy-duty material of things that almost nobody's aware of but are real. It's not to make you upset. It's to make you strategically aware of what's going on around us, because if you get that, then you know what it is that we have to work on healing. And it's you that the healing is waiting on, not somebody else, not the rest of the audience of the radio show. It's you personally. And it's not something bad that you could just do as some kind of a sacrifice. The exhilaration and the high energy that you get from doing it the way that we're talking about is something that even the most fantastic idealized drug or temporary experience could never give you. So I recommend considering it. And before we say goodnight, I'm going to take a couple of phone calls, and there's still a chance to get in if you want to. I'm always willing to leave early if we don't get many calls, because I have a lot of work waiting. But if you want to talk, the number is 657-383-1002. And John, who is a frequent caller and a great contributor to the show, is on the line in Texas. Let's see what's going on with him. Hi, John. How are you doing tonight? Nice to see your
Very good. How are you?
presence here. We're doing fine.
Excellent. I want to say Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays to both you and Doug, and thanks for all that you've done this past year and 2017 for sharing all this great information with us.
Well, same to you. You've done a tremendous amount for the show, which I appreciate greatly.
Thanks to your lessons and all the homework you've given us. Yes, it's been a big help. So.
Yeah, I've been doing it along with you.
Yeah, thank you. I had a question, since you were talking about some of the forms that people fill out when we take ourselves or our family to the hospital. And as far as I have a friend who basically just found out she's pregnant, and we've been working on her diet and things that she can do, more raw foods. Were there anything? Obviously, then we'd have to have the same precautions. I would recommend that she watch out for whatever paper she signs, right, when she goes for her regular checkups, as the pregnancy goes forward. She should just be very careful, basically for the same reasons, right? Whatever paper they have her sign, to make sure that she's aware that she may be signing away certain,
anything that you don't agree with, you have to, or that you don't understand clearly, you've got to put a line through it and say no and initial it. Mm-hmm. What kind of a situation is this person in that you're talking about?
Oh, I mean, she's just a regular. She just found out she's pregnant. It's just a regular pregnancy. But I was just beginning to think, wow, because I've heard stories where you've talked about in the past, vaccines and different shots that are given that basically it turns out later on that. So I've been kind of warning her, and she's been listening to some of the past shows to kind of get an idea about the raw, raw diet, because she wants to eat healthier. I mean, it's kind of a little bit late, but it's kind of kick-started her and wanting to take better care of herself. So she's been really good about trying to switch more to a raw foods diet. And but then now that you've mentioned that, I want to talk to her about that as well, to make sure she's aware when she's there and filling out forms, that she reads them very carefully and not just initial and sign, assuming that they have her best interest.
Right. Well, you brought up vaccines, and that's certainly the case, that most of the time when people go into a hospital, it's getting more and more that they want to give you all possible vaccines. And so that's part of what you sign is permission for that to happen. And I know that Dr. Labo, Rima Labo, has been offering people these little cards to keep with them that tell hospital staff, even if you're not conscious, that you refuse all vaccines. Because as far as we know, I've researched a lot of these vaccines from the beginning, and I've never found one that actually prevents disease. And every single one of them has serious toxic side effects. So that's one thing. But what these people at the conference were pointing out is that a lot of the wording of the things that you sign on the agreements are not what you think they are. And one example that a lot of them were giving was the do not resuscitate orders. They were taking those legally as permission to kill the patient, and it's so bizarre that most people would not possibly imagine that it could be true. But it's true. I mean, the people who are exposing it are the ones working in the system. So you just have to really be careful, and I would say whatever is there to sign, if there's anything you're not absolutely sure you know what it means, I would put a line through it and make sure they know that you're not agreeing to it. And certainly for pregnancy, you don't ever want the baby to be out of your sight. And they'll tell you that they're taking it in the other room to weigh it, or something like that. You could go back or have her go back and listen to the archive of the Denise. I don't remember her last name right now. I'm sorry. Maybe it was Young.
That's okay.
Anyway, yeah. Denise, a couple of weeks ago, the author of The Birth Plan, had a lot of those things on there that are ideal for pregnant women and both partners in a couple who are expecting a baby to be aware of. And if you have to have the baby in the hospital, which is not the desirable option if you can help it, she went over a lot of the things to be careful of. But any visit to a doctor or hospital, you have to be resistant to the psychology that says you're there to follow orders. No, you're there to see what your employees, the people that you're contractors, the ones that you're paying to serve you, what they want to suggest, and then you decide whether any of it is things that you actually want to do. So it's just
I've had that issue.
That attitude.
Right. Thanks to your show and some of the things I've learned, I had that issue this past year with somebody that basically was in part of the healthcare plan that I was working with, who became quite condescending when I was asking several questions. And, I just basically realized that he's not the one for me, and left in the middle of the appointment. And he basically wasn't too happy about it, but at the same time, they're basically there to basically take care of us, and if you don't feel like they are, then I didn't feel bad about it. And
there's a lot of emotional pressure to not make them feel bad, and they really take advantage of that. And
they do.
You don't have to be aggressive toward them. You just have to be really clear on what's okay or not okay.
Well, I just basically said I wasn't really comfortable with the way that the appointment was going, and I just said I just politely excused myself. And then several days later, his office called to reschedule. So
yeah, of course.
I was like, I don't think I'll be good. Well,
if they were open to being educated, that would be okay. But most of the time, they're not. To any kind of professional, whether it's in the healthcare business or any other that you hire, you don't hire them to become your boss. I mean, unless you have some unusual reason for doing that.
Right.
So it's easy to forget.
I don't, and I didn't really care for the attitude and the way that he was basically treating my questions. So I just figured I'm going to find somebody else, and there are other providers.
Exactly, and if you get in the habit training yourself to wish them well while you're getting rid of them, then the residue that you end up with in your own emotional state is not there. You be clear and feel good. And a lot that's tricky, and it's very subtle, because usually when you have to defend yourself, by getting out of a medical appointment or whatever it is you're doing with some kind of thing like that with a professional situation, it's easy to feel antagonistic toward that person. But once you get a certain degree of clarity with what's okay or not okay with you, and you start feeling really strong, you don't have any bad feeling toward that person. You're just clear on what's okay.
No, exactly. Thanks to your homework, when that started to happen, it was almost like it was happening. I was watching it on television rather than I was like experiencing it, and I wasn't basically wasn't being affected, emotionally. It was almost just I was like watching it like on a television, just almost like laughing a little bit, like wow, okay, well, this isn't working, But there was no hard feelings, and there was no.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you will get to the place where you're strong enough, so even if somebody's screaming at you, it really doesn't matter at all. Mm-hmm. You're fine.
Because it was almost like
this idea that we have to respond in the same energy was never true.
Mm-hmm. No, he was almost challenging me to explain myself, and again, almost try to create an argument or discussion kind of environment. I'm like, there's no need to, and no need to waste your time. I appreciate you, and your concern. Thank you very much. Not really comfortable with this, so I'm just going to excuse myself. And again, it was just weird.
A lot of times if they ask you to explain yourself, they don't really want to know. They want to know how they can shoot you down. And
right.
Not necessarily a good use of time.
No, and I said thanks to some of the stuff that you've taught, I was able to see it from an outside perspective and just be like, nope, this isn't going to work. And that wasn't that intimidating. I thought about it later. I'm like, wow, it just was really strange how it just was, there was no emotion. As far as intimidation or anger or anything, just like well, this, and just
it's pretty neat feeling because you're relaxed because you know that you're not really vulnerable to that, so it's okay.
And afterwards, there's no problem. I mean, I didn't think twice about it until they called me to reschedule. I thought it was funny. That's when it came. That's when I remembered. Like, oh, that's right. I guess you kind of didn't get your closure. I got my closure. I walked out the door, but apparently you still want some. So I just said, no, thank you. And I'd let them know,
And occasionally, the reason that you're interacting with somebody is not the obvious one. So, like, if the person calls you back to reschedule, sometimes if you get really quiet, you'll be able to feel there's some exchange that you're supposed to have with that person. Maybe not explaining anything, but just some exchange of good energy to clear whatever there is there. And you start seeing those things as different.
Just go back and maybe do some ho'oponopono, like in my homework for this particular position. Right, okay.
Yeah,
good,
exactly. Yeah, they're just practice sessions for you.
Right. And he's pretty early in his career. He was a rather young physician, so it would probably be a good idea to extend some of that to him because he'll be, I imagine he'll be doing it for a while. So
exactly. Doctors typically do not have a long lifespan because they've got so much stress, because of where they're coming from, and they're not usually, they haven't even been trained how to take care of their own health other than to take drugs. So they need help as much as anybody if they become open to it. And the nice thing about helping them subconsciously is they don't have to be open to it.
Right.
On a subconscious level, everybody's open to it.
Well, yeah. Hopefully, people like that receive some of the things that you were talking about with Ho'oponopono. That next time that happens, he'll be a little more open to working with his patients to. He's just gonna have some spontaneous questioning of things, and he won't know where it's coming from, but it'll help him. Eventually, it'll become conscious. Oh yeah, I'll add that to my homework. Thank you, I appreciate that.
Okay.
And, this is just some of the stuff that it was really helpful. If I hadn't had that walking into it, it might have been a different story. Who knows? So
I'm sure. Yeah, I find the same thing for myself, and it's like we're kids in elementary school with this stuff, but there's no recess. Class is constant. You can be totally relaxed and enjoy it, but you just stay awake and realize that nothing happens by chance. There's everything that happens. If you're willing to take it, it's always a lesson in something. There's nothing without meaning.
And the great thing is if you do the homework in the quiet moments, when you're at home and in your own comfortable space, then when this stuff happens, I've noticed, like whether it's traffic or this situation with the doctor's office, I didn't have to prepare myself mentally and think, okay, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this. It just happens all by itself. That's the great thing.
It's a really amazing experience, in traffic, like you're saying, and people cutting you off and making obscene gestures on the freeway and whatever it is they're doing or screaming at you. It doesn't matter. I mean, obviously you try to avoid having accidents, but your inner state is not ruined by what other people do. Right.
There's no screaming. There's no going home and kicking the dog. There's none of that stuff.
No, the dog is safe with this approach.
Merry Christmas to the dog.
Right, exactly. It's a very dangerous time to be born as a dog in this particular age.
With the vaccines and people getting stuck in traffic and all that. Social media getting people wound up about small things, of course, maybe just say a little, little positive energy for them in this holiday season. But
right. I mean, if we could take the dogs as examples of, behavior between people, in a lot of ways they're way beyond the average human being.
Well, they just basically are always very giving and open. I don't have a dog, but I've been around by them, and they just are usually unless their fear is usually what causes them to become aggressive, not plain aggression or pure aggression. It's just like you've talked about in the past on the show, where it always goes back to fear. Underneath a lot of these other negative emotions or behaviors, as you dig deeper and deeper, eventually you always get to fear, and it's the same thing with dogs, I've noticed. So.
Right. Yeah. It's the owner usually, or the humans that they've been around, and so it is reversible if you're strong enough in yourself. Right.
Well, I've seen that in some of these TV shows where they help these shelter animals that have been abused, and once they get to the level, and I have a friend who adopted a dog that was abused, and it took her a while, but once she was able to get to the dog to feel confident and secure that she wasn't going to abuse it, that she wasn't going to abandon it or treat it poorly, then it stopped having all the physical health problems that it had when she adopted it.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting too. Do you see the guy on TV named Caesar, who was the dog whisperer? I mean, he was really talented guy, and when he went and dealt with a really violent dog, his main therapy would be directed at the owners.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I'm pretty sure the same thing happened with this dog that my friend adopted, where the person that had it was, had lots of apparently, their own personal issues and problems. That's why they basically had the dog taken from them. So it was rescued from this person who obviously had a lot of problems, and the dog, like you said, had just taken it up. So it's a good point. I should basically share that with her, so she could, it wasn't so much just all about taking care of the dog, but the fact that she was more stable, or at least relatively speaking, more stable compared to the person the dog's previous owner was. Then that alone did quite a bit to help the dog. Yeah, and the dogs almost always reflected the improvement in the owners when they changed, when Caesar helped them. And the same principles really apply pretty well to human interaction. If you stay all right, it's very difficult for somebody to have a complete fight with you if you're not in the same energy. Right. No, it's been great hearing Dee talk about that with some of the work that she's done and she shared with you on the show. I mean, where she's been able to center herself and then have that affect the people around her, and I've been really excited to hear that. So I'm appreciative of hearing her stories about how she's been able to do that, and the work that she's done with you. So that's also a big help. Yeah, it's been inspiring. So I think if we're going to take this route and become strange as far as the world is concerned, then it becomes really important and valuable to encourage each other. Oh, for sure. It's so helpful because there have been plenty of times you've been speaking to her or other callers, and, I might have been on hold or listening, and I've got a question that either from earlier in the week or something that came up, as during a meditation or something, and there it gets answered almost exactly as I was trying to phrase it. It's somebody else will phrase it, and I just have to laugh. I'm like, wow, okay, don't need to ask that one.
Well, it's interesting to me that more than 99% of the people that are in our audience are listening as an archive, even to the live show. And at times I've thought, is this really a smart idea to have this live every week? And I think it is, because even if we have a few of the people that take the time to turn up at broadcast time, everybody else who listens later as an archive gets to learn from those people. So I think it's still a good thing.
Right. Oh, it is. It's definitely. I greatly appreciate you and Doug going through all the great lengths to basically put this together, because it's been so helpful. And again, I definitely learned from the other people that some of the questions that they've either sent in by email or when they call. We've had various callers had questions that sometimes I didn't think. They start asking their question, and I suddenly realize I have no idea what Richard will say, or what how I would answer that, or what I think about that. So I'm waiting by the time they finish presenting their question to hear what kind of information you're willing to share on that. So it's always great.
Yeah, it's been really educational for me too, and I'm looking forward to the new format too, because it's going to allow us to go into more depth, I think, since it'll be not officially public, so we have a little bit more leeway in what we can say.
And I think that might be part of the reason. I mean, I know it can be difficult to air some of your personal issues on. I think earlier in the year you had a caller who was kind of just a little bit. He had made a comment where he's like, "Well, I'm not willing to share all of my personal issues like some of the callers are. I mean, on air, willing to." Yeah. And it was just interesting because I'm like, "But you're calling, so that's good." So, I think maybe in the private format, maybe people will feel more comfortable calling in, or at least communicating and interacting with the show. That might be part of the. They'll
be able to be visible or not visible as they choose, depending on whether somebody wants to have their camera turned on at the same time or not. It'll be optional.
Right. So. And I think that this separate format may make them feel a little more comfortable. I mean, rather than the regular open to public format, I think that might be part of it.
The people who get in will have an interest in participating, so that'll be good.
Right, and I think they may feel a little more free rather than in a different format where, again, public, usually with the club format, they feel like, okay, well, this is just people who are like-minded, so I can feel a little more free to express myself and not feel judged or be laughed at or whatever.
Exactly. No, I'm looking forward to it. I think it's going to be great, and we'll see where it goes.
Well, everything you and Doug do is great, so I'm sure it'll work out. So, but it's fantastic. And I'll let you get to the other callers, but thanks again, and Merry Christmas to you and Doug.
Thank you. Merry Christmas, John. We'll talk to you next time.
All right. Take care. Thanks a lot.
All right. Talk to you soon.
Bye.
Okay, everybody. Still wanting to share anything? There's still a little bit of time for you to call in 657-383-1002. And in the meantime, I want to hear what's happening with Dee in California. So, hi, Dee. Welcome. And I hope you're having a good night. What's going on?
Hi, Richard. Yeah, I am. I've had a really good week again. Every week is just amazing. So when you were talking last week about the magic of it, I'm really getting that. I'm starting to see a lot of things that I didn't even know had levels in this dimension showing up. It's been
good.
Really interesting. I wanted to make a correction because I was talking about expectations last week, and I realized this week that it's really not expectations that I want to focus on. I'm more anticipation, I guess, would probably be a more appropriate word. But like you said, words are difficult to find the right
exactly.
one.
You're talking about things in general that are going to come up in life that you're just waiting to see what they are?
Yeah, I don't need to expect, because that's kind of puts a connotation of anxiety on it,
Right. It works against the relaxing job that you're doing.
Exactly. Yep. But things have been happening just really fast and really getting, I asked for clarity, and I guess that was the theme this week, because I got clarity. I got a lot of clarity, and I got things that I asked for answered, just boom, 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 just incredibly fast.
Good. Yeah, more and more I get the feeling that when we ask for things, the answer is always there instantly, and sometimes before we even ask. So it's just a question of us getting clear enough to receive it.
Yeah, I know you were talking about everything's already happened, and so it's not that we're progressing to something, it's already there. So I'm guessing what you meant, as far as clarity on that, is that we are just figuring out what already is. Would that be a fair assumption, or?
Yeah, it's just a progression of getting more self-aware, and everything else follows.
Okay. Well, I was looking at, the fact that everything already is, and we're just here experiencing it. So I was wondering, is it like a smorgasbord or a playground, or do you think that struggle is necessary to appreciate it? That was my question.
It depends on what subconscious beliefs that you have. If you think that struggle is necessary to get to these different parts, then consciousness makes sure that you get to go through that.
Okay.
Once you gradually start realizing, maybe that's not really necessary, and it's not on a conscious level, it's really on a deep emotional level. And once you start realizing that struggle and fighting and everything being really difficult is not actually necessary, then it starts changing. And eventually you get to the point where you're just sitting there receiving one present after another. And that's your life.
Okay, yeah, so it's kind of that way. Instead of expecting anything, I'm just sort of anticipating by seeing what comes up, and then that way I can stay more relaxed, and that way whatever wants to surface or whatever wants to show up in my little realm, I can say, okay, every single thing that shows up is, Richard said that's perfect for the timing, and so I'm looking at it more that way.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, there's nothing that comes up by chance or without some kind of a lesson and message and opportunity in it.
Yeah, and then I was thinking about that and thinking, well, then if I'm riding this crest of the wave, so to speak, I in order to not get bounced up on the rocks and just go flowing down the river pretty smoothly, I just have to stay relaxed and watch and wait and see what comes up, and then accept whatever comes up. And that way I don't get the anxiety so much.
Right. I mean, that principle of relaxing, if somebody only learned that, that's one of the deepest things there is. Because you may think you've got it, but there's always another level that it can go to. And the combination that you're doing is relaxing but staying wide awake. It makes everything else much, much easier and much more possible. So it sounds like you're doing that really well.
Yeah, I've had a lot of opportunities, because normally my life situation right now would freak me out if it was the old me, but now that mind is starting to really relax more, it's not freaking me out. I'm just seeing what's going to happen, because it doesn't really, whatever happens is going to happen, and I'm going to get through it. So
yeah, exactly. It's all learning experience. So it's funny how strongly we believe, most of us, that if certain things happen, you have to get all tied up in knots in response, or be very afraid or worried or angry or frustrated. Those were always optional. And it doesn't mean you're suppressing emotion, because that's not a good idea. It means you're staying relaxed. And if you stay relaxed, those chaotic emotions don't have anywhere to hook onto you.
I'm noticing that, and then also I don't react the same. So since they're not hooking on, I'm not reacting like my programming was.
Right.
So I decided what I was going to do is, when I got thoughts about a situation, normally my programming would want me to project them outward, like, okay, well, if that happens, then this will happen. That's projecting it outward. So I stopped doing that, and I decided to, any thoughts I got about the situation, I would just project them or look inward, scan inward, instead of projecting outward like what you've been suggesting. And I'm happy to say that it does work.
Yeah. It's nice for me to hear that too, because we're all working on the same thing, and you've got all kinds of opportunities to apply it in new situations all the time. And it's an amazing experience. Eventually, you get in touch with something that is so powerful that you become like a positive version of a cell tower, right? Transmitting what you're experiencing to the rest of the planet. And I think, as we've been talking about, a small number of us doing that, even though it seems completely unrealistic and naive and fantastic and all that, I think this is the weak spot in the negative power structure, and that we can change it.
That's encouraging. Yeah, I was reading another book by Drew Ballo, and he was talking about a cycle of 23,920 years that had come around. I think it was 1989 or something like that. That started a new cycle of more encouragement. Like, I guess it would be switching from a more male aspect to female, meaning like happier, not all freaked out. Yeah, exactly. And I've talked to him about that too, and he was saying, it's not going to just reverse all overnight, but the trend is toward more harmony. And if that's true, I don't have a personal way of knowing, how much of that is accurate, but a lot of the things that he said have turned out to be true, and if it is, that's a good thing. And you can see a lot of positive developments in humanity and in the world right now. It's just that you don't see them on TV, and they're mostly unknown, but there's a lot of very positive energy moving in the world at the moment. Right, so I'm starting to look at it more like because that book also talked about dimensions. They're all in the same space, you just can't see them, and so that there's all kinds of different stories going on at the same time, but I get to choose, what story I want to, talk about or tell or believe. Yeah, so and other dimensions are happening simultaneous and in the same place, and it's kind of funny, because most people on the physical level are worried about being alone. And later when they find out that all of these other friendly beings are around them all the time, it's kind of humorous, because they find out they were never even close to alone, ever. It's just that our vision is limited in the beginning, but that gets better. Right, so I was kind of pondering the heaven and hell thing. I'm starting to see more and more how I affect my own outcome, as far as my choice goes every single moment. So I'm becoming to the realization that for me, it's really important to watch what I'm thinking every single second. It's getting very... That's right. And the initial response is that I got to really get tense and watch this so carefully. The opposite is true. You can only be conscious of these things every second if you're super relaxed.
and paying attention.
Yeah, because they would sneak in there and I wouldn't even notice, and I'd fall right into the old programming if I wasn't relaxed. So I am seeing how that is very...
Yeah, but you're right. Every single second, it's very subtle. And as you get more tuned into it, you realize every second is incredibly important, and you start looking at yourself more than the outside, and you say, where are my thoughts right now? Where are my emotions right now? And that, whatever that is what you're projecting and what you're receiving. So it's very important. Just a different kind of focus.
Yeah, because I was noticing that, everything that I project is going to come back on me. So as far as the heaven and the hell thing, I asked Source about it earlier, like right away in the week, this week, like Sunday or something, and then it got shown to me. Like I got a vision of what it would be like to have heaven on earth. It was really, really different.
Yeah, you would like it a lot. It would be something good. And there's no reason not to create that. If the negative rulers are trying to create hell on earth before they exterminate life, which is kind of their idea, then it's like the government guidance program. You just know to do the opposite. And
yeah,
we have a lot of support if we want to do it.
Well, what happened was I went to the store with a friend, and we had several stops to make, and the first store we were going to, he kept on commenting on, like, oh, isn't that little lady walking down the street, really, she looks so happy. And then he would comment, oh, look, there's a dog, and he's, wagging his tail or something. And I'm like, wow, you're really observant. You're seeing all these things that I didn't even notice that are way cool. So then when we went to the second store, he stayed out in the car and I went in, and I saw all these people in line because it was like 2 days before, I don't know, it was a few days before Christmas, right, thing. So everybody's lined up. It was really crowded, and it was a dollar store, and I saw all these people, and I thought, wow, well, if he's observing them, and then I had said to him, when he was observing all these people, wow, you could be blessing those people, So we started doing that as we're driving. So I went in the store, and I just started blessing the people in line, and it was really fun. And then the next store we stopped at, I didn't go in. I sat out in the parking lot in the car, and we were parked where I could see all the people going right into the grocery store. And I was looking at their faces because they had to walk right in front of the car. And it was like a lot of them were really down and out and sad faces, and I thought, oh no, I've got to send them blessings so they won't be sad, so that they'll have happiness blessings, and so I was doing that. And as I was doing that, I looked out over the parking lot, and all of a sudden I saw a vision of all these people that were happy and giving to each other, and it would be exactly what it would be like if it were heaven on earth, and there was no currency, only love, and everybody was sharing everything with each other. It was the neatest glimpse I've ever had.
Wow, how nice. So that sounds like that was a side effect of your exercise that you were doing.
Yeah. I'd asked earlier if I was wondering what it would be like to have heaven on earth, and I got shown it. After I forgot that I asked that. Then when I saw that vision, I remembered that I did ask for that.
Yeah, it's a really different feeling. And it's very close and accessible. It's not that impossible for us to get it at all.
So, yeah, it was a euphoric feeling, and I just thought, wow, it is it gave me encouragement. I thought, wow, it is possible. We could be doing this. Every one of those people that had down and out face could be the people in that vision.
Yeah, exactly. And you can use that parking lot as your laboratory to be practicing.
Right. And then so that was so cool. And then I thought about people that are shattered. Like, I had been talking to a few people. One lady had lost her husband, and another person had lost their spouse a long time ago, like I did, and was still really torn up over it and grieving over it. And I had been stuck in bereavement for 15 years. Mm-hmm. And I know what that feels like, but it was really weird talking to this one person who was in the exact same situation I was in not too much longer than a year ago, just in that whole bereavement thing.
Right.
And I was having a hard time relating. It was weird. It was like, that was me just the other day, but now I can't even relate to it. It was strange. And so I was wondering, how do I help this person? Like, you help.
Yeah, most of the help is always subconscious. And then if they happen to get in a position where they're receptive to actually talking about it, that's great. You can share with them what helped you. But with most people, if they're not consciously ready for that, you're going to have to do it on the silent level.
Okay. I just thought it was strange. It was like my vibrational level was so different than what it used to be that I was having a hard time relating, and I thought that was strange. But now I'm thinking that I don't have to be on the same level, and I don't have to relate in order to love that person and their situation. I can just do what you said last week.
Nobody could take away the lessons that you needed when you were going through that either. You had to be at the right time in order to, step up from that. And that's true with other people too. They need to go through a very specific internal process of getting ready to be receptive to their next step. So, we're not helping them by trying to force them through a step. But if you're sending them good energy on a subconscious level, they're going to get to the next step a lot sooner.
Okay, yeah. So I thought, well, that plucking that string of the instrument, and it's reverberating at a different speed, but it's still going to influence their vibes, right? It'll start on an energy level, there's no distance limitation. If there's a string vibrating at a really clear tone, then every other string is affected, and the ones that are chaotic or negative are going to be affected the most. Yeah, and I thought about fear, because fear is what causes the lower vibration, right?
Actually, fear, it causes it, and it's also caused by it.
Okay.
So if you let your frequency drop and you get involved in drugs, or you hang around where everybody's drunk, or environments that are not very helpful, then the energy frequency goes down, and fear is a natural consequence.
Okay. That's interesting to keep in mind. I mean, it seems like a lot of times things look black and white, but really, if it's a difference between fear and love, as a choice, it could look identical on the outside, but it's completely different on how
it's all tied together. If you're even just doing your relaxing exercise on a deep level, if you're relaxed like that, you can't be afraid at the same time. It's not possible.
Okay, that's the way out of it, and the way out is...
Yeah, there's a lot of ways like that because it's all tied together. So if you relax at a deep enough level, fear can't grab you. It can't happen.
Okay, because I was thinking about detachment from everything. Like, I was wondering if consciousness is realizing that I don't have to be afraid of anything. Like, I could let go of everything, every single thing, and not have anything be a big deal, then is that what consciousness's goal is just to let go of everything?
Well, the tricky part about what they call detachment is that sometimes people cut off what they feel in order to say they're detached. And that gets into suppressing feelings, and that's counterproductive. Because in order to be more conscious, you can't use tools of becoming less aware of things. So what we're after is a balance. You can be aware of how other people feel. In fact, one of the things that happens naturally as you get more awake is you're going to be able to feel what other people feel instantly, just by either thinking of them or looking at them or thinking of them in your mind. Eventually it gets to the point where you'll pick up their emotional state right away. And if you're relaxed, it won't distress you, but you'll still be aware of it. So the kind of detachment you have is that it doesn't make you destabilized, but you're aware of it. So you don't have the kind of detachment where you're just oblivious to everything outside. That's not a real way to get beyond anything. That just postpones it.
Okay. Well, then I could acknowledge that it's there, but just not kind of dwell on it, like even if it's something about myself, because I'm
you're aware of it, but if you're relaxed, you won't dwell on it.
Okay, relaxed. Yeah, I'm trying more and more, anytime something has to do with other people, to never turn it into a outward thought. Anytime it has to do with other people, I turn it, whatever my thought that comes up in my mind, I'm turning it toward myself, or if I have to project it outward at all, I'm working on only projecting like gifts, like, caring and sharing, and like, it's kind of helping me to advance by doing it that way. Like, it's kind of a game with my mind. If my mind tries to critique or project something on somebody else that it thinks of, then immediately it's a flag to me that that's something I have to turn inward instead of outward.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing because you have the ability to deal with everything inside yourself. And you're still doing the outside activities, but what you're using to really make the big changes is all internal. Most of it's not even visible to anybody around you.
Yeah, and it's constant. I can't even let up for 5 minutes.
It's because of the nature of your kids, especially mine. If you drop them from your attention at all, then they go back to old habits and try to make issues for you. So you have to be
more and more
all the time.
So awareness, the more and more I'm aware of every moment is another choice, every single moment, then I'm starting to feel like a teenager, like everything's kind of gawky and awkward right now because I'm seeing it more. It's coming,
habit.
My conscious, not my subconscious.
Right, exactly. It's a totally new pattern of how to be. But it feels much better because the tension's not there. Right.
I'm noticing it. It's actually eliminating a lot of mind's critiquing by being in that state.
Yeah, you don't have any desire to critique other people after a while because it's not relevant, and you realize that they're displaying or demonstrating a stage in the same things that you're going through. So all you want to do is help them.
Yeah, I'm seeing that. It's like ladders, and they're on a rung, but there's ladders upon ladders upon ladders. So every rung has other ladders between that and the next rung, and it's amazing.
Yeah, and everybody's in the exact tailored lesson that they need for the exact moment. So in that sense, it's all okay.
Yeah, and I'm noticing also that the more that I do it the right way, like turning it inward instead of outward, the easier it gets, and the more I allow and don't pay attention, allow mine to run with a critique, it makes it harder the next time. So it gets either easier or harder depending on if I'm keeping, my head above water on paying attention.
Yeah, so good or bad habits multiply themselves. Either one.
Okay, they're like rabbits.
Yeah, I guess so. They keep perpetuating the same thing and more. So that's good. That's really good, because the power of the negative habits is just showing what we could do on the positive side.
Okay. Yeah. So, and then, I've been doing that too. What you said is everything that comes along that normally I might have just thought of as bad, I'm not looking at it that way. I'm just thinking of every single thing that comes up as being good, because it wouldn't have come up if I didn't need it to.
That's exactly right. Or if it didn't have some great opportunity connected to it.
That's helping me stay relaxed by looking at it that way.
Yeah. There's really nothing you have to be defensive about.
Right. And then I'm realizing it's just a choice again of not having to, react. I just have a choice to stay relaxed.
Yeah, exactly.
So I'm making huge progress. I'm just amazed. I think it's exponential. Like, the more that it goes well, the faster and greater it goes well. It's really neat.
It sounds like it. I mean, after a while, you start feeling like you're living in some kind of a magical world. But then you realize, oh, that's the regular world. That's how things always were.
Yeah, that's exactly what it's like. It's been really amazing. I took a walk out in the woods, and I don't know, I might have told you a few months ago, my neighbor, I was walking out there, and he said, well, there's a bear out there, So I turned around and came back in, and then I've been kind of hesitant to go way out there, by myself, because there are bears out there. And then I decided, well, if I'm so relaxed, I can just walk out there because I want to, So I did.
Yeah.
And as sure enough, there was a big old bear paw print in the mud. And so it was like I recognized right away that this is designed specifically for me, because I wouldn't have thought that thought before I went out on the walk, and I wouldn't have found the bear paw print unless it was some kind of a test to see if I was really going to stay relaxed. Yeah,
exactly. If you do, animals are very receptive to that, because they generally are not wrapped up in their intellect like humans are. So they'll go with whatever energy that you're projecting. I'm not saying that, what stage of this little experience you're at, but there's a point where you get to the place where, and June Velo and a lot of other people have talked about experiences with this, you get to the point where animals just immediately recognize that peaceful energy in you, and they respond to it in the same manner. It's quite fun.
So I decided to do it just like the chemtrail pilots. I decided to just send the bear love, because I knew it probably was sitting there watching me walk down the trail.
Right, exactly. Yeah, the same thing works on butterflies and dragonflies and bears. It's just that with the dragonflies, it's easier to practice because most people don't find them very scary.
Right. Well, I thought it was
it works with honeybees and things like that too. You can be in a swarm of honeybees, and if your energy is right, none of them will bother you at all.
That's neat. Yeah, I thought about the fail-safe that you talked about before, where, as long as the caveat is I can't be in fear. As long as I'm not in fear and I choose to love the bear, I'm not triggering, I'm not bringing any kind of fear factor or ego into it at all. Then it's pure source, and that way I'm not wrecking the protection that source gives me even when I'm around wild animals.
Yeah, there are some really great stories about people who have perfected that to a high degree, and they've been several from the Mount Shasta area walking when there are these leopards and things around them, and they turn into very, very friendly pet cats. And it's pretty interesting, but those things really happen.
Wow. I have a hard question. I don't know if it's a good one to ask or not, but I've been really pondering the heaven and the hell thing a lot and asking Source about it, and then I got to thinking, well, what people call God, I'm calling Source, right? So
Yeah.
In that context, I was trying to figure out this whole killer God thing. Like, I know that Source is both positive and negative aspects, and that gives us, a way to look at everything and make our own decisions and choices. But then I thought, well, if the people make poor choices and choose to go with the negative aspects, wouldn't they be the killers rather than Source?
Well, Source is the only being there is in the ultimate level, but it's experiencing itself as different identities that are called people in the world. And they do all kinds of things, positive and negative, but Source in its original form is not positive and negative. It's unconditional, limitless love and consciousness. It's just when it comes down into the form like we're experiencing right now, then it's playing around with doing positive and negative things and makes this whole play that we're in the middle of and that we have a chance to influence. But Source experiencing itself as limited personalities is doing all kinds of things. Some of them are positive and some are not.
Well, then that would be like saying Source is kills, right?
It would be like what? I couldn't hear you.
Does Source kill? That's pretty much the bottom line of the question.
Still not hearing clearly what you're saying. 3 words you said.
I'm saying if Source is the one doing the play and the people in the play as Source are killing, would that equate to Source doing the killing or not?
It's just kind of a semantical thing, because Source is ultimately the one doing everything, but in the form of that person who's doing the killing, that person's not self-aware. So they have this fake identity, not Source, and they think they're this bad guy or bad lady who's killing somebody else. Ultimately, they have the same identity that we do, but they don't know it. So it's like Source walking around hypnotized, thinking it's this limited being is doing these bad things. And then when it wakes up, it stops that.
Okay, so that would be why it would be the same with the animals, kind of.
What would be the same with the animals?
They do the same thing that you just described because there's predatory animals that do just what.
Yeah, animals are generally it's easier to influence animals than it is some people, but it works on everybody, and it's just are they ready, to start becoming self-aware? And I'm saying that there's pretty urgent need the way the place going in the world right now for things to get better. And so I think the power of what we can share with them and how much it will affect them is directly proportional to what we do inside ourselves. So there's a level of resonance and clarity of tone that we can get to. That means when we put our attention on people doing some of the worst things right now, that we're going to be able to make them want to change. And all I can do right now is say that, but I think we're going to be able to prove it.
Okay. So, I figure I could either erase the negatives that I've done in my life by not doing negatives anymore, by relaxing, and I could magnify positives also, but so if we magnify the positives, that is going to be the resonance that we're looking for more than if we erase the negatives, wouldn't it?
Yeah, you don't have to erase negatives. If you're detaching from programs, they don't even matter anymore.
Oh, got it. It's a higher level.
Yeah, you don't have to destroy bad things, even in yourself.
Ooh, that's a good...
You just let it go.
All right. That's... Okay, let it go. I can really let everything go and just see what comes and make it like a game where what's going to come next.
Exactly. Yeah, then you're not going to have to worry how to deal with old history stuff.
Oh, neat. Well, it's been so magical that it's almost... It's like what I don't see is now becoming way more real than what I see. It's like when
exactly. That's exactly what happens.
When I was a teenager, I used to take LSD, and it's kind of like that in a way.
LSD will be like nothing compared to what you eventually get into.
Wow. I can't imagine.
LSD has some problems, too. I mean, LSD can destabilize your mind. So
right.
It's not really a desirable thing to do if you have a choice.
Well, I'm wondering, you were saying about preparing for the next destination last week, so I'm kind of wanted to dwell on that just a bit more if there's time, unless somebody else is... I was wondering about these cycles. Coming in and going out of cycles.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm wondering on this preparing for the next cycle or whatever my next experience is going to be, which is me as source or at one with source and everybody else, then is it an attraction repulsion that whether we're going in or out of a cycle, or is it just something that happens anyways every so many years, or what do you think? What's your take on it?
It's just a way that people have described what's happened in history. Some of the old Hindu philosophy is that there are 4 cycles that keep circulating around and around. And from the lowest cycle, Kali Yuga, or the Iron Age, to the Golden Age, and it keeps going back and forth through 4 different steps, but those are just ways of describing it. The reality keeps moving in cycles, but they're so complex, and there's so many of them that you could spend all your time trying to come up with the right explanation for them, and it wouldn't make any difference. If you're just dealing with how you are in the present, everything's covered. There's no special different kind of preparation for a different time or which cycle happens or any. If you do your work in the present, then you're automatically going to be in harmony with whatever happens. You don't even have to know what cycle it is.
So harmony is a goal, and that way is how I help the planet, is by staying in harmony.
Yeah, if you just let that flow through you and you become that, then it's going to help the planet through you. You don't even have to figure out how to do it.
Okay.
That's why the most advanced teachers, when people, their followers are saying, wow, you did all this amazing stuff, and they all say, no, we didn't do anything. It was the force flowing through us that did it. And we're just going along for the ride, basically. So these great teachers never say that they're anything special. They just say what's acting through them is what is important.
Right. Okay, that's a really good point. I'm glad you brought that up to remember, because it's easy to forget that point, and it's really important.
Yeah, so it's another aspect of relaxing. You never have anything to prove. You don't have an ego identity to defend, because that's not where your interest is anymore. Your interest is on what flows into you and through you.
And that can be like a really neat thing, like a surprise package, and I can look forward to every single thing and look at it differently.
Yeah, it's all fun. That's your work. It's just to have fun 24 hours a day. And our misconceptions say, well, that can't be right. That's irresponsible. I have to really be suffering and, having a hard time. That's totally not true.
So my destination is directly related to how I am able to relax into that kind of harmony?
Yeah, because your destination is there right now. It's not somewhere else.
Oh, that's right. It already is here, right? Everything's already here. Just me.
Yeah, it's just us becoming conscious is the change.
So conscious meaning I'm discovering what already is?
Right, exactly. It's not creating new things, really.
All righty, neat. Well, it's pretty exciting. It seems like it changes as it goes, though, at the same time. It's not like just cut in stone.
Yeah, it's like a kaleidoscope. You've got the same rocks in the end of the kaleidoscope with light showing through them. And it keeps turning around, and they make different designs and stuff, but it's the same stones. They're just reconfiguring all the time.
Oh, neat. I love that analogy. That's an interesting way to put it.
It's just so easy and undemanding, where all you have to do is just relax into harmony with that source that's flowing through you. Most of the complex questions in the mind turn out to not really be relevant. They just, have to be answered to help the mind relax again. But the reality is something that you just let yourself experience.
Okay, so it's just sort of like a big outing. We're going on an outing and seeing what's out there.
Yeah, that's what coming here was about. Yeah.
Huh. Well, I've noticed that as far as applying these tools that you're giving us, that the more I apply what I've already heard, or, I'm internalizing it by using it, by actually practicing with it, the more I practice and use the tools, the more I receive, the more it makes a difference.
Exactly. And I think that that's going to have a massive impact on what happens on this planet.
Interesting. I also noticed, I was watching a movie, and I noticed that my mind reacted with some tension or whatever it was, some kind of an emotional reaction to what was going on in the movie. So it seems like my mind doesn't know the difference between what's real and what's not real.
Yeah, that's true, because all of this is a movie anyway. So the movies in, Hollywood movies and TV movies, they have a really powerful effect on the people that watch them.
Yeah, I noticed myself tensing up, and I had to remind my body to relax again and talk to my mind and let it know that it was just a movie. And
right, you can use it as an exercise. Watch how you feel and think during the movie, and whether it takes you out of your center or not, because if you can do it during a movie, then you can do the same thing during the bigger movie.
Neat. Yeah, I was practicing with it and on mind, to help mind to learn how to respond to me when I was helping it. And then the thought came to me that if I'm talking to other people, sort of keep my mind from getting off track, I decided to try something with mind to see if I open my mouth and speak through body and mind both working on that action, then we're going to try to make it a goal to only speak to other people to help them, not to talk about anything but that.
That's a good idea.
Yeah, it's our new little thing we came up with, so I'll let you know how that goes.
Okay. Because you can put that into any interaction with people that's spoken. I mean, even if you're working on something or talking about how to clean the kitchen or something, what you can say behind what the obvious message is can be the energy to help them in the sense of being uplifting and comforting and, good energy to them, no matter what you're doing on the surface.
Oh, so I got to practice both at once, both the speaking part and the not speaking energy part at the same time?
What are the two parts? Say that again.
One is, like what I said, only speak words that are going to help them, and then the other is the energy that helps them, only...
That's right.
And the energy
the main thing that you're conveying is always the silent part, and you can do it embedded in what you physically say or just quietly.
Okay, but that's the main point. It's the feeling part, right?
It's what you're conveying to everybody all the time without speaking.
Oh, right. Neat. So it's not just when I'm talking to people. This is going to go on in every single thought.
That's right. And even when you think you're by yourself physically, there's all kinds of other people in your mind that you're communicating to. So you become aware of that too.
That's interesting. I started thanking my mind for its babbles. I realized that when it's trying to scramble away from me to run away again, and it starts to get these ideas from the old programs, now I'm recognizing, in order to not just get really frustrated about it, I'm recognizing that, because I went to visit my little granddaughter. She's like 1 year old. But she's learning how to talk. So the words that she makes aren't real words, but she sort of tries to make sentences out of babbling, and it reminded me of my mind. So now my mind does it. I just pretend it's my little granddaughter, and I'm thanking my mind for the babbling words and saying, "Oh, that's really interesting, mind," even though it doesn't make a bit of sense.
All right, and behind the babbling words is a real intent from her. So you can still talk to her, even though she's using babble language. It works fine.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
Well, I'm remembering what you said about, because I had asked you about God and man and the image of God, and so you said that something really I thought was unique that I wanted to repeat just because I thought it was a good thing to talk about, was that instead of man supposed to be in the image of God, which you would think of as a real, good attribute type of a situation, that people often are making God out of their image image. What their perception of God is turns out to be their perception of their self.
Yeah, I mean, that's been done through history, and that's why every side in a war always thinks their God wants them to win and kill everybody else.
Right.
It's just like a big version of their own warriors, generally.
It made me think of the Garden of Eden gate where Adam and Eve were supposed to be kicked out, but they weren't killed. God didn't kill them. He just supposedly, this is just a storybook story, right? I'm just saying the story.
Yeah, God said that they had to keep suffering indefinitely because they were so bad, according to the scriptural version.
Would that be analogous at all to being recycled into this horrible situation of war again? I mean, it's almost like that banishing thing in a way.
I don't think so. I don't think we can blame it on God.
Okay.
I think it's, people having the freedom to learn their lessons however they want to learn them. And you've got a group that is orchestrating all the wars, that's what they want to do. And they've worked really hard to get in the power position where they can start wars. And they consider that as great success in their program. So we're wrapped up in that because we are not aware of our own power, so we're living as victims of them right now. But I'm suggesting that we change that.
Okay, so that would make sense then, as far as cycling and recycling. It's not that it's a punishment. It's only that it's a do-over or another opportunity to really realize what's going on.
Yeah, I mean, you've got all the players on the stage. You've got the ones that are all excited that they have figured out ways to destroy the world, and they've got at least 20 different campaigns going, to any one of which is capable of destroying all life. And then you've got everybody else, most of whom are actually serving the guys that are destroying everything and thinking that they're just doing their job. And then you've got a few of them that are trying to consciously wake up and reclaim the power to change how things are going. Because the people in charge that are running all the wars and everything, their power only looks big because we're almost completely unconscious. What we have available to us is much stronger than the warlords and everybody. It's just we got to wake up to use it, which is what you're describing.
Yeah, kind of like that bear scenario where they're not going to be able to hurt anything if everybody's so relaxed that it can't hurt them.
Yeah, we're going to get back abilities that would seem completely unimaginable right now. So that with a thought, we can make it almost impossible for these things to happen. But we're not quite there yet. We've got some more work to do. Right,
and that's what the World Healing Club is about.
Yeah, that's the idea.
Okay, that's neat. I'm really looking forward to that and excited about it. And you know,
I mean,
if you weren't
most
doing
people,
this,
it may seem really impossible and just imaginary and all that, but there will be a few people, hopefully a lot of them, that will realize it's not impossible. It's not unreal. It's something that really can be done.
Yeah, I'm starting to see that all kinds of stuff is possible that I didn't think was, because the more I apply, like even the diet and even making a choice whether to lick my fingers in between meals, you know, just little things like that is really powerful. It's enabling me to make progress with my own self, with mind and body, and how I'm taking care of them that I wouldn't be able to do otherwise. And so I decided to thank you for, especially for making this available, because how else would we know about it? I mean, you're not going to hear it anywhere. And
it's always going through people, and people, as you do more of it, people are going to be brought to you that need to be exposed to it too. It's just an ongoing play. But it's going to be really interesting to see who ends up in the group in the new video show. So the invitations are going out, and finally we're going to start making some short videos to let people know what it's about. Those should be out hopefully in the next week or so.
Good. Well, I was trying to figure out how to thank Source, because I was so blown away by, seeing that glimpse at the parking lot, and just the bear and all the things that happened this week were so phenomenal, and the realizations that I just wanted to say thank you, but I couldn't figure out how to do that appropriately. But you can talk to Source anytime you want. What I found out is that the higher the being is, the human teacher or non-human, non-physical aspects, the more powerful and higher being you're talking about, the more accessible they are. And they're actually, if you allow it, you can talk to any being you want right in front of your face, as long as you allow yourself to have that direct connection. So if you want to thank Source or God or Spirit anytime, you can do it nonstop, and it will all be received. Wow. That's exciting.
Yeah.
Well, the magic just getting more magical.
Yes. Yeah, and it's easier and more direct, more accessible than we thought. It's all easier. It's all more immediate. So gradually, we'll allow ourselves to realize that what we can do is going to be very interesting.
Yeah, I would think so. Right now I'm trying to keep it simple. I'm just asking Source for what I want to know about and experience, and then I'm inviting, help from the unseen realm, and then I'm, receiving these things. That just everything is coming, and then I'm trying to work on remembering. Sometimes I forget who I am, but as long as I relax, it helps me through that forgetting part.
Yeah. Just remember, you're never by yourself. And as long as you're aware of that positive presence, then you're not going to forget as easily. And
I don't have to try to be anything. All I have to be is relaxed, and everything else happens.
That's right. Whatever is real is going to be there.
Neat. Wow. Well, thank you very, very much for what you're doing, because it does make a difference. I am finding that out just up front and personal. It does make a difference.
Yeah, it's a fun thing we're getting allowed to do. It's pretty amazing. So
it is. I don't think anything can stop it, really.
No, it's got a lot of power behind it. The things that are really, really, I don't know what word to use here. The really aggressive, super forceful things that's not where the real power is.
Right. Well, it's a whole different life than what I even knew about. I'm so to the point where I'm just trying to see what's not seen instead of looking at what is seen, except for nature. Nature seems to be both at once. It's pretty cool.
Nature's beautiful, but you get to a point where you look at nature and you'll start seeing it on multiple levels.
Okay.
It gets exciting that way, too.
Neat.
And everything communicates with you.
So you
just have to try to act normal so that the people you're around won't think you're entirely insane. But your real experience is that there's nothing inanimate in nature.
So every single thing that I put my eyes or my ears or my five senses or my mind or my body toward, every single thing, every single second of every single moment is that experience you're talking about.
Yeah, and they're all looking at you as well.
Wow. All right, well, thank you so much.
All right, good luck with the next chapter, and we'll see what happens next.
Okay, good night.
All right, have a good night. Okay, guys, so we're just about done here. I hope that you'll have an interest to sign up for the Planetary Healing Club at lostartsradio.com/club if you want to work on these things and have direct personal interaction about it every week. It's also going to be full video. The money that we collect from the dues is going to help pay for the new platform, $10 or more recurrent, according to whatever you feel like you want to do. And the usual stuff is still free, available on lostartsradio.com. As I said, I'll keep doing my homework. That's the main thing I'm doing now, and pretty much busy with that around the clock. Remember the show tomorrow night, the show with Ron Panzer, nurse whistleblower, incredible person that we're fortunate to get on, and we're going to have other people from the conference too that are going to come up and share what they have only been able to tell the people in the conference up to now. So I'm just saying, I guess this is all important to know about, but main focus is on doing your homework, learn what it means to be relaxed and pay attention in your life, and let me know how it goes. Remember that you've got people to interact with on the forum during the week and the Facebook group. I'll see you back here for tomorrow's show with Ron Panzer. That's going to be pretty incredible. And then next Saturday after this week's events, we'll meet back here again for the last episode of the public radio-based Church of the Essene Teacher, and then we'll be kicking off in January with a new format. So thanks for being here with me. I appreciate it. Hope you have a great week. Everything goes real well for you. Recognize the lessons and the gifts that are coming in with everything that happens, and your chance to interact with the people that you're going to be with over the holidays or whatever you're doing. And we'll all encourage each other under the surface, and I'll meet you back here next time. See you then.